Imagine someone standing in front of Jesus with a serious look and one burning question. Not about heaven, not about money, but this: who is my neighbor? Hidden inside that question is a whole world of assumptions, social rules, and ancient culture that is very different from ours. To see what that question really meant in the Bible, picture a small village in ancient Israel. The houses are built with mud brick. Animals move through the narrow streets. Everyone knows everyone. Family is everything. Your father's house, your clan, your tribe. Your identity is wrapped in this tight community. The people inside your circle protect you. The people outside your circle are uncertain, maybe even dangerous. In Hebrew, one common word often translated as neighbor is a word that can mean companion, friend, or fellow member of your community. It is not just the person in the apartment next door, like we think today. It is the person inside your shared social world. Same town, same tribe, same story. Now listen to one of the most famous lines in the Hebrew Bible. In the scroll of Leviticus, chapter 19, God tells Israel to love your neighbor as yourself. This line appears inside a larger section about justice and community life. It talks about not stealing from each other, not lying to each other, not taking advantage of the vulnerable, and leaving the edges of the field so that the poor and the foreigner can eat. In other words, Leviticus is not just giving a slogan, it is building a new kind of community. In the ancient Near Eastern world, gods were often thought to care mainly about kings and temples. Here, the God of Israel ties worship to the way ordinary people treat each other. Love your neighbor is legal language, social language, and spiritual language all at once. Later in the same chapter, something surprising happens. The text says to love the foreigner living among you as yourself, because you yourselves were foreigners in the land of Egypt. Now the command is stretching. The circle is expanding. The neighbor is no longer just the person who looks like you or speaks like you. The story of slavery and rescue in Egypt becomes the reason to show compassion to outsiders. Fast forward many centuries. By the time of Jesus, teachers in Israel were discussing how far this command should go. Some said love your neighbor, but hate your enemy. Others debated who counts as neighbor. Is it just my fellow Israelite? Is it only the righteous? What about Samaritans, those people with a mixed history, different worship practices, and long-standing tensions with Judeans? That is when Jesus is approached by a legal expert who asks how to inherit eternal life. They agree on the central commands. Love God with your whole being and love your neighbor as yourself. Then the expert asks the famous follow-up, who is my neighbor? It sounds like a simple question, but it is really about drawing a line. Where does my responsibility stop? Jesus does not answer with a definition. He answers with a story. Picture the road winding down from Jerusalem to Jericho, a steep and rocky descent known in the ancient world as a dangerous route. A man is attacked, robbed, and left half dead on the side of the road. A priest walks by, someone connected to the temple, someone respected as holy. He sees the man and passes by on the other side. A Levite comes next, another religious figure. He also sees the man and passes by. The story is simple, but every detail hits hard. These are the people everyone expects to be the heroes of a Bible story. If anyone knows the command to love your neighbor, it should be them. Yet in the story, they create distance. They avoid the wounded man. Maybe they fear ritual impurity. Maybe they are afraid of an ambush. The story does not say. It only shows their choice to step away. Then comes the twist. A Samaritan travels that same road and sees the wounded man. In the original audience, that word Samaritan would land like a shock. Samaritans were neighbors geographically, but outsiders socially and religiously. Centuries of conflict, accusations of false worship, and mutual distrust stood between Samaritans and Judeans. Yet in the story, the Samaritan is the one who is moved with compassion. He comes near. He bandages the wounds. He uses his own oil and wine. He lifts the man onto his own animal, brings him to an inn, and pays for his care. promising to cover any extra cost. The story paints each action like a brush stroke. See, he comes close. See, his hands get messy. See, he spends his own money. At the end, Jesus only asks one question. Which of these three was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? Notice how the question changes. The legal expert asked, "Who is my neighbor?" Who fits inside the circle? Jesus asks, "Who acted as a neighbor? Who chose to cross the boundary?" The expert answers, "The one who showed mercy." He cannot even say the word Samaritan. Yet the point is clear. Neighbor in the Bible is not just a category. It is a calling. It is not only about who belongs to your group. It is about whether you will move towards someone in need, even when culture, history, or fear tell you to keep your distance. Seen in its ancient context, the meaning of love your neighbor becomes bigger and more challenging. It reaches back to Israel's story of being foreigners in Egypt and rescued by grace. It stretches forward into the teaching of Jesus and the early followers of Christ, who welcomed people from many nations into one new family. So when we hear the command today, "Love your neighbor as yourself," it is not a vague reminder to be nice. It is an invitation shaped by the biblical background of village life, tribal boundaries, ethnic tension, and a wounded stranger on a dangerous road. The story asks each of us a quiet but piercing question. In the places where you draw lines, will you step back, or will you step across and become a neighbor?